Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. This is Dr. Greer, and I would like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every 2 weeks to share information and experiences that we have with all of you regarding the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and DisclosureProject.org and the work we're doing on new energy systems through the OrionProject.org. And we're going to have a really interesting show today because we have a man with us who's been involved for a couple of years with CSETI and the contact protocols we developed using higher states of consciousness and a number of other techniques for making contact with transdimensional interstellar civilizations. And this is a gentleman who has really had some amazing experiences just in the last year and a half or so. And he is just an amazing example of the kinds of developments that can happen when you really give yourself to the process and to the meditation protocols and techniques that we have developed. And his name is Dr. Bill Gray. He's a Stanford-trained medical doctor. He does really pioneering work in homeopathy, and he's actually developing an app for homeopathy that will be, I think, a really big breakthrough, and he may want to mention that as well. And he first started coming to things about a year and a half ago and came for a full week at Crestone, Colorado, back in 2011, I believe it was, and then has come to several of these expeditions since then. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Bill, and I'm so glad you can be here.
Oh, I'm very pleased to be here myself.
Oh, great. Well, why don't you tell folks just a little bit about, how you got involved in your experiences that began to develop, because it's really a great story.
Well, it really is a lifelong thing, being interested in UFOs and so on. I come from an aviation family, and I've always been fascinated by what goes on in the sky and so on, but nothing really developed until just in the last, like you say, the last year and a half. I also was a meditator for about 40 years, but I also found using different techniques in meditation that I really wasn't getting anywhere. I seemed to be focusing too much on the techniques and didn't have any way of judging whether I was making progress or not, and that frustrated me. So when I heard about Stephen's work with CSETI, I thought, well, if that's possible, then I'd really like to learn that. And so I signed up for first a 3-day program in Southern California that was actually very interesting and taught me that the meditative experiences that I could have were outstanding. But the real transformation happened when I was in Crestone for the 7-day program. And just to fill in what happens is we go out in the evening, late evening, and we're under the stars in a circle, and we all do several meditations, some of them guided by Stephen and some just on our own. And I was having my normal meditative experiences when Stephen suggested that we could just literally ask for the ETs to show themselves to us in consciousness, and then also suggested that we could visit their planet. And so what happened to me was I took that very literally, and sure enough, an ET introduced himself to me, and it came inside my consciousness, unified with my consciousness, and took me to his planet. And
right.
I could tell detailed experiences about that, but it was a very real experience. I mean, just as real as I am right now. It was a profound experience for me.
Yeah, we want to describe some of that because it was so very graphic. I remember when it happened, and I remember the meditation when it happened because it was a very deep and higher consciousness experience. That
the whole group was very coherent. That's one of the tricks of this whole process, or one of the fundamental elements. The whole group was very unified, and so the meditation went much deeper than what I can do on my own generally. But in this very coherent state, it was a very deep meditation. Actually, first what happened is I went through a series of kind of car racing sort of things in black and white, which was interesting, which I later figured out is probably the ET's electronic connections with consciousness being enhanced to connect with me. Probably needed a little bit of tuning. So what was happening was I was experiencing something, but it wasn't exactly what they were trying to communicate.
Right.
And when I said, well, I don't want to do that anymore, then all of a sudden I was on his planet. And there was a tall being about Stephen's size, about, I'd say, 6 feet 4 or 5, something like that. Brown-skinned, bald head, but with kind of a little shock of reddish hair coming out of the top of his head and down to his shoulders. He was normal human shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, normal torso. His face was kind of, he had sort of a squarish jaw and thin lips and very deep and very loving eyes. And the experience I had was of great compassion and great respect at the same time.
Right,
and
right.
Inviting me, just as I had been inviting him, he was inviting me to have a relationship. And he showed me around his planet, which is a small planet, kind of a sharp horizon, greenish yellow sky, kind of yellowish ground. But actually we were walking on a portion of the ground that was jet black and very firm, which I later learned just from reading that is a sign of an early stage of development of a planet.
That's right, right.
Which I didn't know at the time. So it's an interesting confirmation. And we communicated telepathically, rapid-fire questions that I had, where he was from, which he didn't answer for security reasons, I understand. But what his job is as an ambassador. He lives mostly in space. And he's an ambassador to all kinds of planets that are undergoing transformation, just like we are, and so he's anxious to make contact. And he's not the only one. They're all very anxious. It's just that we're not very open. So
right.
It took an opening on my part to be able to communicate with him. Since then, he's taken me on his craft, shown me around. As a matter of fact, later on in the week in Crestone, his craft showed up behind me in association with sounds that we've associated with him on my magnetometer.
Right.
And it's a very lyrical kind of symphonic type sound. And towards the end of the week, both happened. The magnetometer and one person in our group could see him in subtle form, and also a lot of the group saw the craft behind me. And when I turned around, it had the exact lighting that I saw when I was with him originally.
Right, and I want to put in a little bit here for people who are new that a lot of what Bill's talking about is the fact that these interstellar civilizations or technologies interface directly with thought and consciousness. And back in 1991, I wrote a paper that made its way through the aerospace industry and the CIA. I later learned about technology-assisted consciousness and also consciousness-assisted technology. And these are very high-voltage electromagnetic scalar systems that are longitudinal electromagnetic waves, meaning that they don't have the sine wave of normal electromagnetic waves such as light or microwave, and they are actually at multiples of the speed of light. And these technologies are so well developed and refined that they interface with lucid consciousness and what people, the mystic tradition would say, the astral dream state. And the reason these protocols work, because it's based on the Vedic understanding of the consciousness that's within us being this omnipresent field of the samadhi state, of the infinite mind, that we go through a series of protocols. We actually do a puja every evening, and then we do a meditation using a mantra, and then from there I take people on a journey, as it were, with an expansion of consciousness that begins to expand and experience the whole cosmos. And actually, you can go to disclosureproject.org. There's a whole training program for this on the website there that you can get. And the reason these are effective is because we use like iPhones and Androids and cell phones that are traveling at the speed of light. But if you're going from one star system to another, the speed of light is too slow, because it would take, they say, from the Andromeda galaxy, that's millions of light years away, it would take millions of years at the speed of light or at the speed of a radio signal or a cell phone signal for a signal to get there, and then millions of years to reply. So any of these interstellar civilizations that we, of course, have proven are here through the Disclosure Project work have to have technologies that drop out of linear space-time into these trans-dimensional or other dimensions, utilizing very advanced electronics that are these high-voltage, low-current systems that actually, if we could develop them here, would give us also free energy and anti-gravity on Earth, and we'll get into that in a moment. But in terms of contact protocols, the reason people have these experiences when they have a breakthrough like Dr. Gray is describing is because they have gone into a very deep and quiet state of consciousness that I help people develop that ability. And we're doing it as a group, and we're intentionally inviting the ETs to interface with us, and they do. And when you have that experience, then you'll suddenly find, once you make that connection, we'll have these magnetic field meters that pick up the change in the magnetic field that's around you. And these are used by electronics people to test devices and things, but we're out in remote areas where there is no electronic source of radiation or magnetic fields. And suddenly they will start making a sound that they don't make if you just put them up to a cell phone or a refrigerator or a microwave. They'll make these sort of very communicative, as if they're talking through the electronics. And in fact, that is what they're doing. They're connecting to the circuitry in an energy field that's nonlinear, and they're causing the magnetic field to shift in a way that these devices become a communication device. And you can actually feel, and I know, Bill, you've experienced this, the emotion and the meaning of what they're communicating, even though it's through this, just this dumb box that you can buy for $200 that, picks up magnetic field changes around electronic devices. And so it's really amazing. And it's very specific to each being, and it's very communicative, and, well, it's just mind-blowing to people when they first experience it, I think.
I've had a number of other experiences with other ETs, but I have to say that the communication that we do through the magnetometers are probably the most valuable to me. I go out about once a week. I live in the mountains, and I have a little clearing, and I just sit out there. And instantly, when I turn on the magnetometer, every single time for the last, every week for the last year and a half, they are there instantly. And now that I've met a number of other ETs, they all have their own signals, and they sort of all chime in at once. I mean, one after the other. And even just the night before last, there was a new ET. There was a dolphin ET that we just had a recent experience with in Borrego Springs. Laura was there, the one from Crestone. Another one I call Charmine. And they each express themselves one after another for 45 minutes straight. And the thing that I find most valuable is, as I meditate, that becomes like a biofeedback mechanism. The deeper I go, the more excited they get. And if I start getting tired or too cold or, I want to go in, then I say to myself, just mentally, okay, that's enough for tonight, and they instantly